25 years ago. I decided I wanted to learn Japanese more. And we have a local university, right? And some of these Anglo professors are married to native Japanese. And these native Japanese were, available as tutors to help learn the Japanese language. Sold, sign me up once a week. Here's some money, give me a lesson, work it, practice it. And one of these, I needed to write a letter to sensei, and I wanted to do it myself instead of giving it to somebody else to translate and all that kind of stuff. I wanted to do it myself. And so I wrote this thing out, and I just asked her, would you help me translate this thing and whatnot? And so I brought it in, and she stopped at the very first line, right? Where I used the term sensei. Because we had talked about what I do. We actually met to do my classes in my dojo, right? During downtime. So we had these conversations. She was Japanese. She was interested, not in training, just in that aspect of her own culture. And so, in English, right, we're here, whatever, everybody uses sensei, right? But she said, based on what you told me, he teaches you more than just martial arts, right? Just more than the fighting and techniques and things. Like there's philosophy and like how to live and how to see things and those things. And I said, yeah, there's a lot. And she said, I don't think this is the right word. I said, but this is a word that everybody uses. She said, I don't care. Right? She said, in Japan, there's a deeper word, shisho. Shisho means master of the way. And it's used by people in martial arts and whatnot, master, that kind of thing, right? But she said, to the average Japanese, shisho points beyond the martial aspects. It's about all aspects, right? Shisho is a teacher of life. They're a mentor. They're a guide. They go way beyond a sensei who is a teacher, a guide, or an instructor, right? So everybody's a teacher. She said even somebody like they could be a lawyer, but if a new lawyer out of law school or whatever is just trying to be the best kind of lawyer and stuff, somebody might point to some older guy or whatever that's a lawyer and stuff, and or people might refer to them with their last name, maybe it's Yamamoto or whatever, right? And add the term sensei to the end of it. People might go, see a teacher, see a martial arts teacher. No, what they're pointing to is that if you're trying to learn this, copy him, right? So it's more of an honorific where the thing that you're studying and learning, in this case, law or whatever, right? It's the practice of something, right? It's like the skills, right? Emulate him. Okay. But Shisho, that goes way, way past, right? It's a life teacher, like somebody who shapes your being at your very core, strips away what you thought you knew about what's going on to show you the way things work, right? The skills, not just the skills, but the personal traits and characteristics, the soft skills and whatnot that you're going to need to be able to see things clearly, to better know how to or when not to use those skills, right? This points to a principle in our art, kotsu, right? The kotsu of a technique. Okay? Most people know the word kotsu to mean bone. Some people know that kotsu could also be ego, right? Like your sternum. In Japanese, the sternum is called the big ego bone, okay? Because bone is kotsu, but ego is also kotsu, different kanji. The sternum is called the big ego bone because people with a big ego puff that baby out and just jut it out at the world, right? So it's kind of a play on words, right? But kotsu in Budo, the kanji we're using for kotsu is essence or the essential nature of. And I did an exercise with folks during camp on the kotsu of Ichimonji no kata, right? So if we understand the kotsu of the technique, right? A lot of people can get their heads wrapped around the fact that the kata is a model of principles and concepts, strategies and tactics in physical form. Here's what we're doing, not just how we're moving and we're hitting his arm, or we're doing uke nagash, and then we're chopping his neck and things like that, right? That's baby talk. I mean, it's important to get the moves right, but this goes way beyond the form, right? That when I learned that the forms were not just for the forms for fighting, the forms were examples of these invisible things, the principles and concepts and things like that, then every kata is not just an example for how to win a fight, a physical fight. It's also a kata for conflict resolution in any form. Right? So if somebody's yelling and screaming at me and they want to be arguing, right? And we understand the kotsu, the essence of Ichimonji no kata, right? We step back, which is what, right? We're rendering whatever the attacks pointless, right? We're discerning the entire time, right? We have zanshin going on. We're paying attention, right? So we can identify weaknesses, strengths, and whatnot. We're going to avoid the strengths, right? And we're going to identify weaknesses, right? The way they move, when things open up, what they expose, those kind of things. So when it's time to move, we do something that stalls them or otherwise breaks their balance so that they can't operate in our direction the way they want to for that brief moment where we counterattack. But what are we counterattacking? It's not just like brute force, whatever, right? In our system, we are targeting only the weaknesses, the things that they cannot defend, or when they try to defend it, it just makes shit worse for them. This is the kotsu. Somebody's arguing with me, right? I emotionally detach, right? I control my mind and I control my heart so that I don't feel the need to sling shit back at them, right? I pay attention, right? So that whatever they're slinging at me doesn't affect me, right? If they're throwing things at me that are true, then I can deal with those things later. Either way, right? I'm not ignoring it. I'm ignoring it for the moment. Okay, that's true. I should work on that, right? But I'm going to set that off to the side. Things that they're embellishing, I'll say that's important, right? So maybe it's a little bit of a problem, but they're making a mountain out of a molehill, so to speak, right? So I'll remember those, okay? But that's going to be kind of a backup, right? What I'm listening for is shit that they made up, okay? Because when people argue, when people fight, right, they're more about saying or doing things so they can win. Problem with that is that when they make shit up later, when everybody's making up, right? I really didn't mean it. Bullshit. Okay, nothing can come out of your mouth that hasn't already been in your head or your heart for a while. It's just you had your filters up, right? But now that you want to win a fight, see, now you're willing to say it. And then culturally, we've been taught that we can just apologize and try to take it back. But the reality is, nothing's ever going to come out that's not in there first. So when they do that, if they've made it up, right? If it's a lie, I say that's what I'm going to target when I go back. So when they take a breath, or when I'm done with this thing, I have what I need. Whoa, my turn. And then I'm only going to target the shit that they can't defend without making their position worse. Teach Ichimonji no kata in a simple thing, but it's non-physical. This is what we mean by living the art, not just imitating it. Okay. So Again, most people meet a sensei. Only a few ever find or are found by their shisho. That's why the teacher-student relationship in Ninjutsu isn't about, or just in all Japanese Budo, right? It's not about signing up for classes. It's about being chosen for transmission. Even in the Bible, it says, many are called, few are chosen. Right? Again, ego doesn't like this, right? Because pick me, right? Hatsumi Sensei said, to be a true student is to empty yourself. Only then can the art fill you. Okay? All right, I'm just going to keep on going here because we're pushing the length of this episode, right? So, teacher's purpose, right? A true master looks for three things before they transmit. That doesn't mean that they're not teaching knowledge. That doesn't mean they're not teaching techniques. When everybody gets stuff that will serve them. Okay. But the teacher has to identify somebody who's looking for depth, not who just says they are, that their actions and the presence of this person speaks something. Right? They're not making it up. It's genuine. Right? You see this in self-sacrifice and all kinds of things, right? The teacher's looking for at least these three things, right? Loyalty to the lineage. I would also add that they're just like jazzed about martial arts. Okay. But you know what? A shisho in the realm of music would be looking for somebody that, just when they hear music or they play it or whatever, you can see they feel it. They're not just playing music. That music is an expression, right? But there's loyalty to the lineage. Hatsumi Sensei, back in 1998 at the Princeton Taikai, when he said that because people didn't understand ninjutsu, right? This is 98, right? This art hit the US in like somewhere between 78 and 80, right? Big ninja boom and all that. And, but he said, way too many people, because they misunderstand it, they are getting hurt. They're hurting others, right? And because ninjutsu is a variation on conventional Budo skills, like how do you vary things that you don't understand? So for a while, we're going to focus on conventional Budo. So before we return to Ninpo Taijutsu, we're going to focus on Budo Taijutsu. And most of you know my story because I've explained this before, that long before that seminar was ever over, right? People were saying, oh, we don't do ninjutsu. We do Budo Taijutsu. And well, the rest is fucking history. But anyway, what he said, and this was on the heels also of Manaka Sensei leaving and forming the Jininkan and whatnot, right? And so when Shoto Tanemura left the Bujinkan to form the Genbukan, it's a bunch of mudslinging and stuff, not from Hatsumi Sensei, Tanemura Sensei, just he's doing it wrong, violating the lineage and all this stuff, right? It was a mess. I don't know how many people know that Tanemura Sensei is Hatsumi Sensei's cousin. Big hoopla that went on at the funeral for Hatsumi Sensei's mother. Just a whole bunch of it was a shit show, right? Worst thing I ever said or I ever heard Hatsumi Sensei say about Tanemura Sensei was he's always wanted to be in charge, so now he is. Of course, I wasn't in all the meetings, but that's the worst thing I ever heard. But when Manaka Sensei left, there's a whole bunch of cultural thing, and I've explained that in the past. Hatsumi Sensei said what he's doing and how he's teaching. People need that. Okay? He's uber focused on basics, and a lot of people, they think they have it because they're collecting techniques, but their basics are terrible, right? So he's what they need, or what he's teaching and how he's teaching it, people absolutely need, right? But he said, but at a certain rank level, you have to pick a teacher. The lineage demands that you pick a teacher because at that point, it's like a doctor who's a generalist, who hits a point where they decide that they're going to be a specialist, and they go through a fellowship. This is not an intern. This is not a residence. They go through a fellowship. So they're going to go from an internist to maybe being cardiopulmonary or, brain surgeon or something like that, right? And so they have to commit to the lineage. They have to commit to that path, right? That's what we're talking about, right? Loyalty to the lineage, right? 2, they must have a respect for the process. Right? 3, they must have a capacity to carry it forward with integrity. When a teacher finds a student with these traits, they know that the art will live at least another generation. Okay? That's how we honor our teachers, not by collecting scrolls or certificates or rank or the number of kata we know or whatever, but by living what they gave us. Right? This ceases to become something that we do, and we take it in so that it becomes who we are. Nagato Sensei has said, you must live Budo in your daily life, or it's just a performance. It's just imitation. So, again, as always, right? If Kuden, right, this podcast, right, this is how I establish the theme of training for each week, right? If this is about the invisible thread between teacher and student, then using the Kotsu, the essence, right? Then this week's Whiteboard Wednesday, I'm going to focus on showing you how to train to be worthy of that trust, right? So how do we set up training so that it's not based on preference, it's based on process? Okay. So my plan, and that will move into Friday's masterclass, right? We're going to look at how a single technique or a single waza. I showed some folks one particular one this weekend during fall camp, but how a single technique, a single movement, a single waza, right, evolves. I'm going to say through the ranks, but I'm talking about through skill proficiency, skill progression, personal development, because it's not just about the physical moves. Like any monkey can do the moves. Okay? What we're talking about is going from mechanical execution to calm precision under pressure. Right? The range, the distance between the attack and the defensive move gets smaller. But it gets smaller because our confidence, not in our ability to do the technique, but in our confidence in our kamae, in our knowing where the fist is going and where it'll be when it gets where it's going. Not just in the model, but when somebody's throwing whatever they want, right? I'm not just looking at the movement of the fist and the arm. I'm looking at the space that's growing or shrinking or being created in that process, right? Hatsumi Sensei has always said that when you understand that you're not controlling him, you're controlling yourself and the space, everything changes. Okay. But there's also this other progression, right? This seamless flow and this confidence and whatnot that comes out of mental states, right? Many of these things they're all in the Seishin Teki Kyoyo book that I wrote, right? So these things come from the development of Fudoshin, right? The immovable heart, the unshakable mind, right? Heijoshin, where this becomes how you move, right? It's no different than any other daily task that you don't even freaking think about when you do it. And ultimately, Mushin, right? Clear mind where you're not guessing, you're not assuming, you're not thinking about the technique before he throws that punch because you know he's going to throw that fist. Well, because that's what the teacher demonstrated. But what if this guy has free will? Right? That kind of stuff, right? Because again, mastery isn't about learning more. It's about deepening your understanding of what you already know until it becomes part of who you are. And that leads into a quote I've been using from Hatsumi Sensei for the last 6 months to a year, right? People focus on collecting techniques, wanting to get onto the next one. And what he said is they want to move to the next thing before they understand that technique to the level they should. Because ego wants to be entertained. Right? So kind of wrap this up, and I'll take some questions if they're out there, or I'll handle some comments. But when the teacher finds the right student, right? When the shisho finds the deshi, it's not just a relationship. It's not just an agreement between two people. It's an agreement with the lineage. It's an agreement with all past masters who have come before. And again, at the risk of sounding woo-woo, it's an agreement with the universe. Right? Ultimate truth. One promises to protect and guide. The other promises to carry and preserve. Okay? Hatsumi Sensei has also said, Ninjutsu is not about winning against others. It's about winning against yourself. Takuma Sensei, again, I'm getting these things from Hatsumi Sensei. Right? The essence of Ninjutsu is perseverance. Keep going when others quit. These are personal character traits. These are not techniques or skills to be learned. This is a reflection of the person and who they are and what they're willing to do. Not force themselves to do, right? This is not New Year's resolutions. Right? I'm going to will myself to, no, that's not going to last very long. Okay? Okay? So that's why the true transmission of this art isn't about fighting. It's about transforming who you are so that one day you can be trusted to pass it on. As long as ego wants to learn this for ego's own sake, then that person will never be a conduit. Because that's not their big why. That's not their. Now, when I first started, okay, it was about not dying. Then it was about learning as much as possible and passing things on to people so that they wouldn't die. Along the way, I'm being trusted to pass this stuff on correctly. So I may not use the same words. I may not use the same analogies. But it's the essence that perseveres.